So the left's new hero, Kilmar Albrego Garcia, has become the epicenter of the American media cycle over the last few weeks, in an obvious attempt to thwart Trump's deportation and immigration policy. There's so much false information on the story and ineptitude from the American media, so I'm going to concisely give you the hard facts, and then you can decide whether to extol, exalt, or condemn this so-called family man. So, let's get started. Fact. Garcia is an El Salvadorian citizen who entered the U.S. illegally in 2011, crossing the border near McAllen, Texas. He did not come through any legal point of entry, according to court documents. So anyone telling you that this guy is an American citizen is flat out lying. Fact. In 2019, Garcia was arrested in a Home Depot parking lot in Hyattsville, Maryland, along with 3 other men, while allegedly seeking labor. But the Prince George County PD accused him of being a member of the MS-13 gang based on his clothing, a Chicago Bulls hat, and his finger tattoos, which I'll display on screen is obviously MS-13. No criminal charges were filed, but led to immigration detention due to allegations of El Salvadorian gang membership, subsequently leading to 2 asylum hearings. On April 24, 2019, Garcia was denied bond, citing evidence from an unnamed associate that Garcia was a verified member of MS-13. Fast forward to October, the immigration judge denies his asylum request, but granted him withholding of removal due to a, quote, well-founded fear of persecution by the Barrio 18 gang. This status allowed Garcia to remain in the U.S. with a work permit. Fact. In 2021, the wife and mother of his child, Jennifer Vasquez Shira, filed a temporary protection order in Prince George County, Maryland for domestic violence. Oh nice, so this guy beats his wife. No charges were officially filed. Next, in 2022, Albrego Garcia was stopped by the Tennessee Highway Patrol for speeding and for an expired driver's license. He was driving a vehicle with 8 other individuals, raising suspicions of human trafficking, likely fellow MS-13 gang members, alleged the Biden Department of Homeland Security. Again, no charges were filed. Finally, in 2025, Garcia was pulled over by ICE officers during a routine traffic stop. ICE informed him that his immigration status has now changed, obviously due to the incoming Trump administration, and was detained and deported back to his home in El Salvador. After the deportation, a U.S. district judge ordered the Trump administration to facilitate Albrego Garcia's return, calling the deportation an illegal act. The Supreme Court upheld this ruling. Now, when Trump hosted the president of El Salvador, Nayib Bukele, in the White House on April 14th, both of them were asked by CNN's Caitlin Collins about Albrego Garcia and if Bukele would facilitate Garcia's return home back to the U.S. Here's what both of them had to say.
Return the man who your administration says was mistakenly deported. The man who was mistakenly deported to El Salvador?
Well, let me ask Pam, would you answer that question?
Sure, President. First and foremost, he was illegally in our country. He had been illegally in our country. And in 2019, 2 courts, an immigration court and an appellate immigration court, ruled that he was a member of MS-13 and he was illegally in our country. That's up to El Salvador if they want to return him. That's not up to us. The Supreme Court ruled, President, that if, as El Salvador wants to return him, this is international matters, foreign affairs, if they wanted to return him, we would facilitate it, meaning provide a plane.
As 2 immigration courts found that he was a member of MS-13. When President Trump declared MS-13 to be a foreign terrorist organization, that meant that he was no longer eligible under federal law, which I'm sure you know, you're very familiar with the INA, that he was no longer eligible for any form of immigration relief in the United States. So we had a deportation order that was valid, which meant that under our law, he's not even allowed to be present in the United States and had to be returned because of the foreign terrorist designation, because he is a citizen of El Salvador. That is the president of El Salvador. Your questions about it, per the court, can only be directed to him.
I asked President
Bukele?
Can President Bukele weigh in on this? Do you plan to return him?
Well, I suppose you're not suggesting that I smuggle terrorists into the United States, right? How can I return him to the United States? Like I smuggle him into the United States, or what do I do? Of course, I'm not going to do it. I mean, we're not very fond of releasing terrorists into our country. I mean, we just turned the murder capital of the world into the safest country of the Western Hemisphere, and you want us to go back into the releasing criminals so they can go back to being the murder capital of the world? And that's not going to happen.
Well, they'd love to have a criminal, released into
I mean, there's a fascination.
They would love it.
Yeah.
They're sick. These are sick people.
So in conclusion, We have a man who's a member of a South American gang that sex traffics 7-year-old girls and sells fentanyl across the border, a man who beats his wife, a man who obviously should not be in this country, who, yes, has had his due process regardless of what the fake news media spews, and yet Democrats like Senator Chris Van Hollen are flying to El Salvador to interview Garcia as some kind of sad victim of the Nazi Trump regime. This is why the left is losing. They continue to victimize horrible people, and the media continues to get everything wrong that you could possibly get wrong.